Disclaimer: this content is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. It started on one of those quiet evenings when the world outside the window seemed to move slower than time itself. The soft hum of the air conditioner mixed with the gentle tapping of his fingers on the keyboard. He sat at his desk, his brows furrowed in focus, the golden glow of the lamp tracing the lines of his face. I stood by the door for a moment, just watching him, the way his hair fell slightly over his forehead, the way he bit his lip when he was deep in thought. Something about that calm, silent focus made the air between us feel heavier. I remember thinking, how did it get to this point? We were just colleagues once, two people sharing a space, deadlines, and late-night coffee. But over time, something shifted. The glances started lasting longer. The conversations got softer. The space between us, smaller. And tonight, as papers cluttered his desk and half-written notes scattered under the light, I felt something in me give way. He looked up, his eyes catching mine, tired, yet warm. "You're still here?" he asked, his voice low, rough around the edges from hours of silence. I nodded, pretending to look at the papers in my hand. "I thought you might need help finishing this report," I said. But that wasn't the reason. The truth was, I didn't want to leave. Not yet. Not when the quiet room felt like it was holding its breath with us. He leaned back, studying me for a moment. The corner of his lips curved into the faintest smile, not playful, not teasing, but something in between. "You always know when to stay," he murmured. And just like that, the tension I'd been pretending not to feel came rushing back. I took a step closer. The desk between us suddenly felt like both a barrier and an invitation. The air was filled with the faint scent of coffee and paper ink, strangely comforting, yet charged with something unspoken. My voice trembled slightly when I said, "You've been working for hours. Maybe you should take a break." He didn't answer right away. His eyes met mine again, holding me there, saying everything words couldn't. And then, he stood up. Slowly. The chair rolled back, the sound echoing in the quiet room. My heart raced, unsure of what would happen next, part of me wanting to move, another part rooted to the spot. He took one step closer. Then another. Until the desk was no longer between us. I could hear his breath now, steady but deep. "You think I can stop working that easily?" he whispered. Before I could answer, his hand brushed against mine, and the world seemed to pause. Papers rustled. A pen rolled off the table. And in that suspended second, everything changed, the silence, the distance, the restraint. But that's where I'll stop for now. The moment his hand brushed against mine, the room felt smaller, like the walls had leaned in to listen. I froze, unsure if it was the right thing to stay, but something in his eyes made it impossible to move away. The air was charged with everything we had never said, and yet it felt as if both of us understood it all without words. Still, nothing more happened. He just looked at me, his expression softening, as if realizing he'd crossed an invisible line neither of us had defined. He took a slow breath and stepped back, running a hand through his hair. "Sorry," he said quietly, almost to himself. "I didn't mean to make things weird." His voice was calm, but I could tell he wasn't as composed as he wanted to seem. I shook my head, forcing a small smile. "You didn't," I said, though we both knew that wasn't true. Something between us had shifted, and pretending otherwise only made it heavier. To ease the tension, I walked over to his desk and started gathering the scattered papers. "You've been working too hard again," I said softly. "You don't even notice when it's midnight anymore." He gave a tired laugh. "Deadlines don't care about time." I glanced at the half-empty coffee mug beside him and replied, "Maybe. But people do." For a moment, silence settled again, the kind that feels both comfortable and dangerous. Then, without looking up, he asked, "Why do you stay so late, anyway? You could have gone home hours ago." His tone was curious, not accusing, but it caught me off guard. I could have given a simple answer, that I had extra work, that I liked the quiet, but instead, the truth slipped out before I could stop it. "Because I don't like leaving you alone here." He finally looked up, eyes searching mine, as if trying to read what I really meant. I wasn't sure myself. All I knew was that being near him had started to mean something I couldn't explain. Maybe it was the long nights, the quiet company, or the way he made the ordinary moments feel different. He smiled faintly, a mix of gratitude and something deeper. "You don't have to worry about me," he said. But the way he said it, low, almost tender, made my heart skip. "I know," I replied softly, "but I still do." Outside, the rain began tapping against the windows, soft and steady. The sound filled the silence between us, wrapping the room in an almost cinematic calm. I watched as he leaned back in his chair, eyes drifting toward the window, lost in thought. There was still so much neither of us had said, but maybe that was what made it real, the quiet pull, the unspoken questions, the lingering moment that refused to fade. The rain outside grew heavier that night, each drop against the window echoing the rhythm of my thoughts. He went back to typing, but his focus wasn't the same. I could tell from the way his fingers hovered over the keys longer than usual, the way he stole quiet glances when he thought I wouldn't notice. There was something unspoken hanging between us, something that neither of us dared to name. I pretended to read through the reports on the desk, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying that fleeting moment when the distance between us disappeared. Maybe it shouldn't have happened. Maybe it was just the exhaustion, the late hour, the quietness that made the smallest things feel louder. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. He broke the silence first. "You know, I've been meaning to tell you something," he said, voice low but careful. I looked up, unsure if I wanted to hear what came next. "The company offered me a new position," he continued, eyes fixed on his computer screen. "It's in another city. I haven't decided yet." For a second, I didn't know what to say. I forced a polite smile. "That's great news," I managed, though it sounded more like a question than a compliment. He finally looked at me, and the weight of his gaze said what his words didn't. "Is it?" he asked. The question lingered. The thought of him leaving hit harder than I expected. Maybe I had been fooling myself, telling my heart this was just friendship, just late nights, just work. But hearing him talk about leaving felt like someone had quietly taken away something I didn't know I was holding on to. I tried to change the subject, but he leaned forward slightly, his tone softer. "You've always been good at hiding what you feel," he said. "But I see it sometimes, when you think no one's watching." His words caught me off guard. I wanted to deny it, laugh it off, but nothing came out. The tension between honesty and fear wrapped around us like the rain outside, constant, unrelenting. I turned away, focusing on the sound of the rain. "Some things are easier to keep quiet," I said finally. "It's safer that way." He nodded, almost understanding. "Maybe," he whispered, "but safety doesn't always make us happy." The way he said it stayed with me long after that night. Now I keep wondering, was he giving me a choice that night? Or was he asking me to stop him from leaving? The next few days at the office felt different. Nothing had been said about that night, but everything had changed. The easy silence between us was gone, replaced by something heavier, an awareness that neither of us could shake off. Every glance, every word, carried a weight it didn't before. He started coming in earlier, leaving later. I did too, though I told myself it was just for work. The truth was, I didn't know how to let go. There was this quiet pull every time I saw him sitting at his desk, lost in thought. Sometimes, our eyes met for a second too long before one of us looked away, pretending it meant nothing. One evening, I found him staring out the window as the city lights flickered against the glass. The folder I handed him slipped from my hand, scattering papers on the floor, just like that first night. We both reached down to pick them up, and again, our hands brushed. A spark, subtle but undeniable. This time, neither of us pulled away immediately. He spoke first, voice quiet but firm. "You've been avoiding me," he said. "You think I don't notice, but I do." I didn't answer right away. My pulse was too loud in my ears. "I'm not avoiding you," I whispered, though even I didn't sound convinced. He stood up, the distance between us closing again, slow but deliberate. "Then what are you doing?" he asked. It wasn't anger in his voice, it was something else. Something raw, like he was fighting the same storm I was. I took a step back, but he followed, not to corner me, just to be near enough that I could feel the warmth of his presence. "If you take this new job," I said softly, "you'll forget all of this ever happened." He shook his head. "Do you really think I could?" The words hit harder than I expected. The rain started again outside, echoing the night everything began. The world beyond the glass looked blurred, uncertain. Maybe it was a sign that we were standing in a moment that could go either way. I turned to face him fully this time, no excuses left to hide behind. "Then what do you want from me?" I asked. His jaw tightened, and for a second, I thought he'd finally say what we'd both been trying not to. But he didn't. He just looked at me, that same unreadable expression that had haunted me for nights. The silence stretched until it almost hurt. I could feel the question hanging in the air, trembling between us, waiting to be answered. And before either of us could speak, a soft chime from his phone broke the moment. He looked down, eyes narrowing slightly. "It's them," he murmured. "They need my answer tonight." I stood there, my heart pounding, knowing that whatever he decided next would change everything. Would he walk away, or stay to face what we both couldn't say out loud? He stood still for a long moment, staring down at his phone. The screen glowed against his face, reflecting the kind of decision that didn't just affect work, it affected us. I waited for him to speak, but he didn't. The only sound was the soft hum of the rain and the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. When he finally looked up, his eyes were unreadable. "I think I have to take it," he said quietly. "It's everything I've worked for." I nodded slowly, forcing a calm expression even though my chest felt tight. "You should," I said. "You deserve it." But the words tasted bitter. He studied me for a moment, as if searching for something I wasn't saying. Then he sighed, slipping the phone into his pocket. "You always say the right thing," he murmured. "Even when it hurts." For a while, neither of us spoke. The silence between us had shifted again. This time, it wasn't filled with unspoken feelings, but the echo of goodbye. I started gathering my things, trying to focus on anything but the ache in my chest. That's when I noticed it, an envelope tucked beneath his pile of papers, marked with my name. I frowned and picked it up. "What's this?" I asked. He froze. "You weren't supposed to see that yet," he said, his tone uneven. My heart skipped. "Then when?" I asked softly. He hesitated, then finally said, "After I left." My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside was a letter, handwritten, something almost no one did anymore. The first few lines were simple: "Thank you for believing in me. For being there when no one else was." But as I kept reading, my breath caught. He had written about everything, how our late nights had changed him, how the silence between us had started to feel like home. And at the end, a line that stopped me cold: "If I don't tell you before I go, know that I wanted to, but I couldn't risk what it might do to you." When I looked up, he was watching me, eyes filled with something between regret and hope. "I wasn't supposed to fall for you," he said softly. But I did. The words hung in the air, heavy and fragile. I could feel the walls around me closing in. Everything I'd tried to suppress came rushing to the surface. The nights, the glances, the moments that weren't supposed to mean anything but somehow did. Before I could respond, a sudden sound broke the stillness, a knock on the door. We both turned. It was the director from the head office, soaked from the rain, holding another envelope. "Sorry to interrupt," she said briskly. "The company just changed its offer. The transfer is on hold. There's been a situation." He blinked, clearly thrown off. "What kind of situation?" She hesitated, glancing between us. "Someone filed a report. They said there's been an inappropriate relationship in this department." The air in the room froze. My stomach dropped. I could see the shock in his face, the disbelief. "That's not true," he said quickly, his voice tight. The director didn't respond. She simply placed the envelope on his desk. "You'll both be called in tomorrow for questioning." After she left, the room was silent again, but this time, the silence wasn't soft or heavy with emotion. It was sharp, cold. He turned to me slowly, eyes filled with something that wasn't just fear, it was pain. "Who would do this?" I whispered. He shook his head. "I don't know. But someone wants to make sure I don't stay." The rain outside grew louder, almost like the world itself was warning us. And in that moment, one truth became painfully clear: our connection wasn't just complicated anymore. It was dangerous. The next morning, the office felt colder than usual. Everyone seemed quieter, glancing up as we walked in, whispers following us down the hallway. I could feel the tension in every step, like the floor itself knew what was coming. We were both called into the conference room, the blinds drawn, the atmosphere heavy. The director sat across from us, a stack of documents in front of her. "We received an anonymous report," she began. "It claims there's been a personal relationship affecting professionalism here. We need to understand what's true." He spoke before I could. "There's nothing inappropriate," he said firmly. His voice was calm, but I could hear the strain behind it. I nodded, echoing, "We've always been professional." The director studied us for a long moment. Then she placed a printed email on the table. "This was sent from your department's server," she said quietly. "And it contains details only someone close to you both would know." My heart sank as I leaned forward. The words on the page blurred, but one sentence stood out: "They stay late almost every night. Everyone can see what's really going on." I felt sick. "Who would do this?" I asked. The director hesitated, then turned to me. "We traced it back to your account." I froze. "That's impossible," I whispered. "I didn't send this." He immediately stood up, shaking his head. "There's no way she did. Someone's framing her." But the director only sighed. "Until we complete our review, both of you are suspended." The words hit harder than I expected. It wasn't just the job, it was everything we'd built, the long nights, the quiet connection that had felt so fragile and real. I turned to him, my voice breaking. "What if this ruins everything?" The message on his phone changed everything. It wasn't from the coworker who had framed us, it was anonymous again, a single line that sent chills through both of us: "You may have cleared your names, but the truth is never as simple as it seems." For days, we waited for something else to happen, but nothing did. Slowly, life went back to its normal rhythm, at least on the surface. The office whispers faded, the stares softened, and the storm that had surrounded us finally began to quiet down. Yet, something in both of us had changed. He kept his word. He stayed. The job offer in another city was gone, but neither of us seemed to care anymore. We began working side by side again, though the space between us felt different, not tense this time, but steady, grounded. What had once been quiet uncertainty was now quiet understanding. One evening, as we wrapped up the last of our reports, he looked at me and said, "You know, I don't regret any of it." I smiled softly, knowing exactly what he meant. Everything that had happened, the late nights, the chaos, the doubt, had forced us to see what was real, what was worth holding on to. The truth was, love doesn't always arrive in grand moments or perfect timing. Sometimes, it shows up in the quiet, in loyalty when everything else falls apart, in the choice to stay when leaving would have been easier. As we turned off the lights and walked out together, I realized that the rumors, the accusations, the fear, they didn't define us. What did was the strength to face it all, side by side. Still, a small part of me wondered who had sent that last message, and why. Maybe some stories don't end with complete answers, maybe they end with the people brave enough to keep writing them. And that's where ours ends, for now. If you were in my place, would you trust the quiet again, or always wonder who was watching? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you'd like a sequel, hit like, share this story, and subscribe for the next chapter.